Hello guys, and welcome to an official race recap for the AOR Season 8 F1 2013 Championship. This video will cover round 11, the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, as we move towards wrapping up the final season of league racing on F1 2013. First, let's take a look at how the grid looked like for the Italian Grand Prix, where TRL Rosberg took yet another unsurprising pole position, his 7th out of 11 races this season, but behind him a very impressive qualifying by KPDK92 to take 2nd on the grid. Then came Minty and Brošek on the 2nd row, with X360 the championship leader qualifying in 5th. The Continent started his home race from a solid 6th place on the grid, and a surprise further down with Ricky C, the man sitting in 3rd in the championship, only managing 10th. But the biggest shock of qualifying was TRL Limitless, X360's main championship rival, who lost connection to the session right towards the end and could not get back into the lobby in time to start the race, giving X360 a great opportunity to extend his 21-point gap at the top of the championship. So it was lined up for an exciting Italian Grand Prix with 12 eager drivers ready on the grid. And it was Brošek that would make the first move of the race by getting a great start of 4th place, getting alongside Minty on the run down towards turn 1 and gaining position already. KPDK had also got a great start. I was eager to get a move done on Rosberg early on, diving up the inside of turn 1 and getting the move done on the exit to move up into the lead of the race. The Continents also tried to make an early move around the outside of X360, but couldn't quite pull it off, and luckily all the drivers were able to get through turns 1 and 2 without any notable incidents. The first driver to make a mistake in the race was TRL Maisie, who ran wide out of the second Lesmo, leading to him losing out to the Scandinavian duo of Leobot and Fisi 91, and yes, I'm going to keep this strictly third person. At the start of lap 2, KPDK92 realised quickly that he was going to have to fight to keep the first place of the race, with TRL Rosberg putting up a challenge down towards turn 1, forcing KPDK to go defensive, but he kept his line nice and tidy through turns 1 and 2 to keep ahead of Rosberg for now. Maisie wasn't going to be the only Ferrari driver to make a mistake out of the Lesmos, as his teammate TRL Minty also ran wide, fortunately for him not hitting the wall but losing out to both X360 and the Continent. And there was more action ahead for the race lead, as Rosberg was going up the inside of KPDK through Ascari but cutting the corner slightly, and then KPDK got a push from Brošek behind, which slowed the Polish driver right down, and it was easy prey on the straight for X360 and the Continents to pick off, but he managed to defend 5th place just about from TRL Minty going through Parabolica. Going down the main straight to start lap 3, TRL Rosberg decided to be on the safe side, as he deliberately slowed down to allow KPDK back past him to make sure he was not facing a post-race penalty for completing an overtake off the circuit. However, that ended up putting Rosberg under pressure from X360 as well, and those two went side by side through turn 1, with X360 actually gaining the position, the championship leader moving himself up to 2nd place and KPDK getting a nice little bit of breathing space. A man who was looking to pick up some places from where he started was Ricky C, having already passed TRL Maisie on the previous lap. He went around the outside of Fisi 91 on the exit of turn 2, after a bit of a scramble in front of them, where Leobot also got himself past TRL Minty, and then having a look at Brošek down towards chicane. Brošek managed to stay ahead to start with, but it seemed to put him off a little bit, as on the exit of the chicane he put the tyre in the gravel, having to save the car from spinning, and Leobot went past anyway, and Ricky C decided to pick up the scraps as TRL Minty was forced wide through the first Lesmo, and then Ricky got the job done himself for 6th place, going side by side with Brošek through the second Lesmo, and after a long drag down towards Ascari, he managed to pull ahead of the Marussia driver. And this was just moments after TRL Rosberg's mistake had moved the home favourite, the Continents, up to an amazing 3rd place. And the action on lap 3 was far from done, as coming up to Ascari, Brošek misjudged the braking point, ran wide into the gravel and spun back across the track, collecting a very unlucky TRL Minty and throwing him off the track as well. Surely an incredibly frustrating moment for the Ferrari driver, but at least Brošek showed fair play and let him back past. However, both of those drivers now had a serious catching up job to do. At the start of lap 4, KPDK had set a purple lap to show that he was intent on pulling away from the battling duo of Matti G and the Continents behind, and a weird incident happened where TRL Rosberg tapped the rear tyre of Continents, somehow ending up spinning into the gravel on the right side of the track, seeing the entire mid-pack stream ahead of him before rejoining the track in 10th place. So interestingly, 3 of the top 4 qualifiers now found themselves in the 3 bottom positions. In other words, a nightmare start for Rosberg, Minty and Brošek. It was soon time to start thinking about pit stops, and the Living Dead was the first driver to take the plunge into the pit lane after only 4 laps to change onto the prime tyres ahead of what looked like a 2-stop race for all the drivers. On the next lap, race leader KPTK and second place X-G also went into the pits, meaning that it was time for the Contadins to take the lead of the race for a lap in front of his home crowd. No problems for the leaders in the pit lane, but it was problems out on track for Leobot, who was about to get passed by Fisi. The pair going side by side down towards turn 1, Leobot trying to hang around the outside but Fisi having him covered. The Contadins came into the pit lane at the end of the next lap and had a normal pit stop without any issues, slotting back onto the track in a net third place behind KPTK and X-G, and there was action behind as the Living Dead has made his early pit stop work and jumped ahead of Leobot and Fisi491 as they were coming out of the pit lane, completing the move on Fisi by holding it around the outside of turn 1, getting the inside for turn 2 and get a better exit to move up to what was currently 7th place on the track. But the battle wasn't over there, as when Fisi and Living Dead held each other up through the chicane, Leobot was ready to strike, moving past Fisi on the exit, but then getting blocked off by Living Dead, who was defending the inside line into the first Lesmo, giving Fisi a chance to fight back on the outside of the second Lesmo, but Leobot on the inside had him covered, and Leo was going to pick up another position when Living Dead made a mistake on the exit, putting a wheel in the gravel, losing a lot of speed onto the straight, allowing Leobot to fly past up into 7, and the woes for Living Dead would continue on the exit of Ascari as he completely spun off the track into the gravel, losing an end plate in the wall, dropping all the way back behind Brošek and Minty, throwing away all the advantage he had gained by pitting a lap earlier and more. It was then going a lot better for the other Mercedes driver, Ricky C, who went into the pit lane at the end of lap 7, switching onto the prime as the last option runner to go into the pits, meaning KPTK moved back ahead with the fastest lap as well. It was now only Citizen ahead, who was yet to make his first pit stop as he started the race on the prime tires and was going longer, and Ricky C rejoined the track in a net 4th position behind the Contadins. At the same time, just behind, Fisi and Leobot continued their all-Scandinavian midfield battle that seemed to be never-ending as Fisi passed Leobot up the inside of turn 1 on lap 8. And on the next lap they would swap positions once again, this time on the back straight when Leo used his DRS to his advantage for a pretty simple overtake, but he had to work for it by going defensive after Ascari after Fisi put him under pressure, but he held his ground and managed to stay ahead for now. Up at the front, Citizen seemed to get a little bit too excited after being in the lead of the race for 2 laps, locking up massively into the turn 1 chicane and having to take to the escape road. He didn't lose out too badly however, and KPTK moved back into the proper lead of the race as Citizen pitted at the end of the lap. He rejoined the track in 8th place but on a different tyre strategy to everyone else, and just behind him Brošek was making a move on Minty for 9th place down the straight. And on lap 13, another Marussia driver who was looking to make up some positions after a poor start was Tyrrell Rosberg, who had caught up to the battling Scandinavians, but Fisi was not keen on letting him through easily, defending his line into turn 1, forcing Rosberg to stay behind. Brošek and Citizen had been having a bit of a battle, with Brošek having passed Citizen at the start of lap 13 before getting repassed by him at the start of lap 14. And he was now hounding the gearbox of Citizen to try and get past again, but he also had to look behind him with Tyrrell Minty looking feisty and wanting to pick up some positions himself. Minty going around Brošek into Parabolica and then getting a run on Citizen, which led to a 3-way ding-dong down towards turn 1. Citizen trying his best to haul it round the outside of Minty into the chicane, but having to back out of it and then got too much on the curb, which allowed Brošek to go around the outside of turn 2 and up to 9th. After withstanding the pressure from Tyrrell Rosberg for a few laps, Fisi had his sights set on passing Leobot again, but he got too eager on the throttle coming through Parabolica, putting a wheel onto the grass and having to make a massive save to avoid the spinning off, ultimately losing out to Rosberg anyway. At the end of lap 16 it was time for drivers to think about a final pit stop, as the top 3 all went into the pits, allowing Ricky C to take the lead of the race temporarily again. No problems in the pit stops for either KPTK or the Contadins, and they slotted back onto the track in the same order with X-G still in between them. But there were loads of cars coming into the pit lane behind them, and it was problems for Leobot, who got held up in the pit box due to Brošek coming in for his stop ahead, something which allowed Fisi to jump past both Leobot and Rosberg into the pits. Brošek also getting held up a massive amount after poor communication in the Marussia team meant he was pitting on the same lap as Rosberg, and that lost him a lot of ground to the other midfield runners. Meanwhile, Ricky C had been having a fantastic in-lap on his worn prime tyres, and a great stop by the Mercedes boys in the pit box as well led to Ricky rejoining the track just ahead of the Contadins, meaning that he had jumped him, essentially going up to 3rd place. On the next lap it was time for the midfield battles to commence once again, with Leobot looking to the outside of Fisi down towards turn 1, but he locks his inside tyre, ending up cutting turn 1 and letting Fisi back through, and this also put him under pressure from Tyrrell Rosberg going towards the second chicane, but Rosberg on the inside turned in too early and got too much of the curb, severely compromising his exit and dropping behind TRL Minty as well. But on the next lap, Leobot was at it again, this time choosing the inside line down towards turn 1, and this time making the move stick for 6th place, despite Fisi's efforts to try and get back up the inside through turn 2. And then suddenly TRL Minty decided to appear out of nowhere as well, catching Fisi off guard, getting himself up the inside down towards the second chicane and moving him up to 7th. And Minty was definitely on a charge now, as later that same lap, he dived the inside of Leobot towards Ascari with a slight bit of contact that pushed Leobot onto the curb and slowed Fisi down as well, which allowed Rosberg to come up the inside going towards Parabolica. But that didn't really matter, as Rosberg then went straight on turn 1 on the next lap, rejoining the track back behind the Norwegian. While there was action galore down in the midfield, there was nothing really going on for the top positions, with the KPTK holding on to a 4-second lead over Xmatic, and behind them, Ricky C moved past Citizen at the start of lap 20 to get up to 3rd, but Citizen had not yet made his final pit stop. And while one Mercedes driver was looking on course for a solid podium, the other was having a nightmare race, and Living Dead did not do himself any favours by completely wrecking his front wing in the wall at the exit of the second Lesmo, taking away any hope he might have had of scoring a point. And the midfield fight would just not end, with Fisi and Leobot passing and repassing each other constantly. Fisi getting past at the start of lap 21 and then holding on into Ascari later in the lap, but then Leo getting back past at the start of lap 22 with a very impressive outside move, holding it around the outside of turn 1 without any kind of contact, completely clean driving, and Fisi was still not keen on giving up the position as he got a better exit, used all his curves coming out of turn 2, and he was now drag race on the run down to the second chicane, with Fisi having the advantage of the inside line going into the corner, Leobot trying to fight back, staying right on him, but tapping his left rear tyre and ending up sticking a wheel into the gravel, a situation which allowed Rosberg to completely mug both of them off on the exit, passing Fisi as well going into the Lesmo. But it was not over there. At the end of the same lap, Fisi was challenging Rosberg back, going into Parabolica, and he carried more speed going round the outside, turning the fuel up the rich mix and then out-dragging Rosberg on the run down towards turn 1 to regain 6th place. Amidst all the battling, Brošek and Maisie had slowly been creeping up to the back of the queue, but on lap 23 Brošek would make yet another mistake at Ascari, running wide into the gravel and almost collecting the second Ferrari of the day, and when Citizen arrived on the scene, now having done his final pit stop, both Maisie and Brošek were easy pickings for him on the straight. And it was going to turn from bad to worse for Brošek, because after going side by side with Maisie through the first 2 corners, he turned his car into Maisie a bit too much, spinning off his rear tyre, suddenly facing backwards on the track, and with only 4 laps to go now in the race, Brošek would surely have to settle for a non-points finish. And just ahead of that incident, another similar move was about to happen when Rosberg went round the outside of Fisi down through turn 1, and Fisi almost made the same mistake as Brošek did, turning into the rear of Rosberg, luckily for him not spinning completely around, but he did drop down to 8th after losing out to Leobot. And Leo immediately went to attack Rosberg down towards the second chicane, but Rosberg managed to defend well, holding his line through the chicane, leaving Leobot with no way to get past. The midfield started settling down a little bit in the last couple of laps, and the focus turned to the front of the field, where KPTK was on course for his first ever win in the top AOR F1 league. He went into the last lap 5.2 seconds ahead of second placed Xmatic after slowly but gradually building up a gap throughout the race. And the Williams driver had no problems bringing the car home, coming around the final corner and crossing the line in a very surprising first. However, the celebrations were short-lived for KPTK after a post-race stewards inquiry and subsequent investigation saw him awarded with a 20-second time penalty after the stewards deemed him to have cut certain corners too persistently throughout the race to gain an unfair advantage. This meant that Xmatic inherited the race win, with Ricky C also moving up to second, and after thinking he was finishing 4th, the Contadins actually ended up with a podium position at his home race. A very impressive performance by him, while KPTK's penalty dropped him down to 4th place. And despite the clear disappointment of losing the race win, this was still KPTK's best finish of the season so far. But the race wasn't over just yet, because on the final lap there was still more midfield action in the race, with Leobot struggling with his worn tyres and having a slide out of the second chicane, allowing Fisi right back on his tail. And as Fisi put him under pressure coming through the Lesmos, Leo ran wide onto the back straight, dipping a wheel in the gravel, giving Fisi a final opportunity to get past, one which he took with no problems with the aid of DRS as well. Although he had to work for it as Leo fought back into the final corner, but Fisi parked his car on the inside line on the apex, and the Toro Rosso driver just wasn't close enough coming out of the Parabolica to get a proper run towards the finish line. meaning that Norway beat Sweden in the Scandinavian battle at the Italian Grand Prix after a cracking race-long battle between the two drivers. And behind them, the Frenchman Citizen had to settle for 9th place after his alternate strategy, ahead of Tyrrell Maisie and then Brojek rounding off the finishers. So to sum up the results, X360 wins the Italian Grand Prix, getting another 25 points for his championship challenge, with Ricky C and the Contadins as the other two podium finishers, and KPDK finishing 4th after his penalty. Then Minty, who had a great comeback drive after his struggles at the start of the race, ahead of TRL Rosberg, who won the midfield scrap with Fisi and Leobot. Then Citizen and Maisie weren't too far behind, and a nightmare race for both Brojek and the Living Dead led to them not scoring any points, and TRL Limitless, due to his connection problems, sadly didn't even make the start. For the championship, this meant that X360 was now a massive 46 points ahead of TRL Limitless in the battle for the title. Ricky pulled a bit of a gap on TRL Rosberg with his 2nd place, and the only position change was Minty moving past Fisi for 5th. Not much change really in the constructors either. Red Bull still dominant at the top ahead of Mercedes and Marussia, Williams chilling out by themselves in 4th, then Toro Rosso, Ferrari, Caterham and Sauber covering the bottom half. The next Season 8 race, which will also be a recap video similar to this, is the grueling Singapore Grand Prix around the Marina Bay Street Circuit, so hopefully that will be out in not too long. I hope you enjoyed the Italian Grand Prix from the AOR Xbox 360 F1 League. See you at the next one and goodbye for now.